respect to the military institution that they are voted within. It is, yes. Now, of course, I can tell you that I have gotten my department head at South Dakota State is Gregory Peterson. I believe you guys may have met him when you were in South Dakota State. And Gregory does a lot of good work. But of course, he works for me in the ILT now because he's doing our work as academic dean. And so I am hierarchically higher than him with respect to ILT. But technically, he's hierarchically higher than me with respect to South Dakota State University. So I mean, this is not deep stuff. But it's stuff that we got to keep track of and understand when we start to think of these thoughts of hierarchy and how accountability and hierarchy and fellowship connect. X, now I have a nice little philosophical thing here. X with respect to Y is ingredient in hierarchy H, but with respect to Z is, this could form hierarchy Q. So X with respect to Y can form hierarchy H, but X with respect to Z can form hierarchy Q. And we don't need to get into this, but I wrote it down. At that point, I just forget it. It's my mass and my thoughts this morning. Okay, so now let us think of the nature of a hierarchical relation. Now I define this. This is a little nicer. X is hierarchically higher to Y if and only if, for some set of properties P, X has authority A over Y with respect to P. This is a way now to connect hierarchy and authority. X is hierarchically higher to Y if and only if, for some set of properties P, X has authority, some authority, we'll call that A, over Y with respect to this set of properties P. Now, what we've done here now is we've connected hierarchy and authority. They are intimately connectable, I believe. They are deeply linked. And now, perhaps it is time to give an example that actually connects to all of us. Preacher X is hierarchically higher than parishioner Y if and only if, for some set of properties, let us say occupation of the Predigt, office of preacher, X has authority over Y with respect to that occupation. Now, I mean, we live in such an anti-hierarchical age. Well, there's hierarchy everywhere, but we have this idea that there's not, because, we're Democrats and, democratic egalitarianism. We can't see all of the hierarchy that floods over that. But we say with respect to something, we're not hierarchical, so then we think, well, everybody is just on the same. And no, it doesn't work that way, of course. The office of the preacher, the predicant, is occupied with one who has the qualifications, right, to preach and teach the word. I say preach and teach because, of course, in Latin it's the same word. If you look at the documents. So preach and teaching the word in the office of the predicant, there is authority there. The pastor has, the preacher has, over the parishioner who does not occupy that office. Now, what is it to be a preacher? It's one who can preach and teach the word. And of course, we have all kinds of ways where ecclesial bodies try to determine who can actually preach and teach the word. And that's why they go get degrees and those kinds of things. But the real authority comes from the actual preaching and teaching of the word. So we have all kinds of guys out there, and ladies, with all kinds of qualifications that have no authority, even though they occupy conditions which qualifies them to occupy the position, right? Whereby we think they should be able to preach and teach the Word. But of course they can't preach and teach the Word, or they don't preach and teach the Word. So really they don't have they aren't hierarchically hired with respect to those parishioners. In fact, I can imagine parishioners being hierarchically higher than them if they can actually go preach and teach the Word. This is really important. I mean, we try very hard, to create these structures to ensure some kind of quality control here, and it sometimes helps, and sometimes fails. Okay, now there'll be all kinds of conversation we can have on this. Accountability. Okay, here's a definition of accountability. There's 3 things I want to talk about. Fellowship. Oh.
We really do have a question right here, don't we?
Yes, please go ahead.
Because what we have is an authority. We have parishioners who will grant hierarchy or authority to preachers based on things other than their ability with the Word of God. And we have those who won't. So what we really have is an authority problem in our culture.
I think you're right. And of course, when we look at this authority problem, I always like to think of this in the Greek way, right? Is the authority problem one of ignorance? Is it that we do not recognize those conditions which grant the authority? Or is it that we do recognize them and ignore them? And this is a very important point. My guess is that
So then our accountability issues are out of whack in terms of correctly recognizing authority or non-authority of whatever office is being held or teaching is being offered.
You got it.
Our accountabilities are, and I've argued this for quite some time, that what's missing is the, to put it bluntly, coldly in American terms, it's the system of checks and balances of the building of the U.S. Constitution. You want to look at the ELCA, the whole issue of checks and balances and cross accountabilities are completely void in the system because of this notion of trusting.
Exactly. And it was like the ELCA was formed thinking that it could be a denizen of another kingdom than the one that it can only occupy.
Right.
So I wanted to bring this up with respect to being alongside of and being with. But of course, being alongside of in hierarchical relationships, this is all part of the orders of creation, right? And certainly this is a left-hand concern. We built a church called the ELCA where we seem to think that it could occupy something on the right to a greater degree than it did, where people would be in communio, being with each other, that there would be a spiritual reality, and all of these things would work out nicely. We did not take an adequate look at, nor did we reflect deeply enough on the footprint of the fall.
Yeah.
We talked about we talked about this in the Word Alone Board. We were looking at how we were trying to put LCMC together. Yeah, we was big on